Well, that was a crushing disappointment, wasn't it? Hello there, and welcome to rewriting Higurashi Sotsu, because it was very underwhelming. They spent a lot of time wasting time. I mean, I think it was like 13 episodes recap, and then 2 episodes actual new content. I say recap, it's from a different point of view. You do find some stuff out that you didn't in the first season, in Go. But no, it's not good enough, I'm afraid. Not good enough. So much so that I think I could do a better job. And hey, hopefully you agree with this. So first of all, let's go over the rules for this challenge, I guess. First of all, no changing the episode count. So 15 episodes is what we got to work with, because if I say add or remove episodes, it sort of takes away from the whole I could do it better thing. Being like, yeah, anyone can make a good show if they have 700 episodes to do it. And also, no changing the events of previous seasons, because if you asked me if I was allowed to change Go as well, I would just not do it. You know, these are unnecessary sequels. I think so. I don't think they're terrible. I just think they're kind of unnecessary. But with that being said, let's just get into this and begin with what I would change, starting from the first episode. Episode 1 begins with a scene that actually did happen in the original series as well, with Aowa getting confronted in the world of fragments by Hanyu. Why this is important is it actually gives better context to the recap, basically. The recap is going to be Aowa showing Hanyu what Satoko did and how this all went down, as opposed to just it continuing from the end of last season, but we'd already got past that. Don't worry about it. So yes, the first episode, we're not going to spend 13 episodes recapping the Go with a different point of view. What we're going to do instead is the first episode is the first 2 arcs of Go from Satoko's point of view. Now I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, you're really going to recap 6 episodes in 1 episode? Yeah, I am. Because think about it really. How much of that information is really important to the overall story? Not a whole lot. Basically, show what Satoko did, show the outcome of it, or how it led to the outcome, and we'll be golden. We'll be golden. Third thing to note, I forget how many things we are to note. Thing to change, make sure Satoko is really, really sorry and feels bad that she's doing this to her friends. It's really not that hard. Make Satoko actually have remorse. Be like, this is for the greater good, we'll be happy again. Not in the way she did in the original, where she was sort of condescending and almost mocking. She's like, oh, I'm very sorry, guys. No, actually put some emotion into it. Have her give a crap about her friends other than Rika. Rika can still be number 1, which is why she's going through with it regardless. But have her care, man. And that's where episode 1 ends, at the end of the second recap. Have Hanyu looking horrified throughout the episode, because scary faces, it's bread and butter, innit? Bread and butter, keep that. Episode 2, I'm going to keep this really brief. Episode begins with Hanyu basically saying to Aowa, look how much Satoko is suffering, because, you know, she's pained doing all this to her friends, and Aowa can laugh creepily because that's what she does. And the third arc is in this episode 2. Important thing to note, when the series started, episode 1 and 2 came out on the same day, which is important because that means we're getting the recap done on the very first week. Isn't that a great idea? So yes, this whole third episode is basically the events of the third arc, same as in the original, but condensed down like with the first 2. With one notable exception, don't do Satoko versus Satoko here, because it wasn't explained, and it just wasn't explained. It's dumb. Don't do it here. If you're going to do it, explain it, and I'll give you a spoiler. I still do it, but it makes a bit more sense, in my opinion anyway. So yeah, second episode, don't have a lot to do. Third arc, no Satoko versus Satoko. Everything else can stay basically the same. Maybe don't have Satoko be all of an asshole to Rika when she's done. Like, are you quite dead yet? Don't do that, because we're making a more likable Satoko here. We're not butchering her character completely in this version of Higurashi Sotsu. Third episode begins with Aowa and Hanyu still watching the video fragment of the 4th arc of Go. Now the important thing to note is we're not going to spend time looking at that, because this is where in the original they used a lot of reused shots just with Hanyu screaming, and that's not interesting at all. No, instead what we're going to do in this episode is we're going to explore Hanyu's backstory, right? Go to the 07 wiki, Hanyu's backstory section, you can fit that in an episode, add a little bit where Aowa creates her because she was bored, just to see how humans would react. Because that's what she's like. Aowa's whole thing is motivated by boredom. She doesn't want to be bored. She thought that would be entertaining. Then we have Hanyu's backstory, basically as it's told on the wiki. look at the wiki. I don't need to go through it. Leading up to, Hanyu losing faith in humanity, and then we'll have a little bit with, like, oh, Rika brought my faith back and all that. That's basically what we're going to do this episode, instead of, watching an arc we've already seen before, almost verbatim. Don't do that. To put something new, it makes more sense. Also, this brings up the sword again, giving the sword more context in the anime verse, because I think it is mentioned in the visual novel, although I haven't read it. But in the anime, I don't believe it was ever mentioned before Go. So do this to let the sword, hey look, the sword is actually important to the lore. Do that as well. Episode 4 is basically episode 14 of the original Higurashi Sotsu for a long section of it, because the fighting through different worlds was kind of cool. It's just a cool thing to do. One thing that's not cool and that we're cutting from this is the superpowered fight, because it doesn't make any sense. Because there's no reason ever given as to why they have superpowers now. So we're not going to do it. That's just sorry, that's not how it is. Get to the climax of the fight, it's pretty similar. Rika's got the sword, Satoko's been defeated. Rika, of course, refuses to kill Satoko with the sword, stamps the sword in the ground, like in all the cool movies where they got the sword sticking out of the ground. That's pretty cool. But of course, Rika refuses to go back to Hinamizawa. Satoko, of course, isn't going to relent either, refuses to come to St. Lucia. Satoko instead decides, well, Rika, we're at an impasse here. Satoko falls off the bridge. She backward falls off the bridge, killing herself. Rika can look all shocked. The reason we've done this is because in the original Sotsu or Go, whichever it was, Aowa told Satoko that if Satoko dies before Rika, she will be sent to a world without Rika. We're going to do something with that, basically, because don't bring things up if you're not going to explore them later, essentially. But that's where this episode ends. Satoko dies first, Rika looking very surprised, more shocked, maybe a bit appalled as well. Episode 5 is going to follow Rika as she travels to a fragment without Satoko, and this is a more of a somber chapter of the story. Rika is just going to be going about her daily life. We see her as St. Lucia. She'll go back, visit the club members and have fun with them, but Satoko is nowhere in sight. You can have Keiichi is probably a good candidate for this. Just say things like, hey, I feel like there's something missing, something very overtly like, yeah, we kind of remember Satoko, but not really. Which, of course, this will stir Rika into action, be like, okay, I've got to go get Satoko. Basically, this whole episode, just show Rika's daily life. She should be happy, but she isn't, because that's an important thing to note, is Rika needs Satoko just as much as Satoko needs Rika. In the original, it kind of felt a lot like Satoko was pining after Rika, when in reality it was portrayed as they are two peas in a pod, so to speak. They need each other very much. I mean, they don't, but they think they do. So yeah, Rika decides at the end of the episode, all determined, like, okay, I'm gonna go find Satoko. Episode 6, Rika returns to the world of fragments where she meets Hanyu and Aowa, and basically Aowa tells Rika that she's responsible for everything. She gave Satoko her powers and basically goaded her into going through all this. And Rika's not very happy about that, but what can she do? Aowa is super powerful. Maybe she can throw a punch at her, but Aowa can do something epic because she's God, basically, and can do whatever she wants. Yeah, don't mess with her. Because she's so powerful, she tells Rika where Satoko is, and essentially Rika should not be able to travel to that fragment because Rika doesn't exist on that fragment, basically. They can explain how it works, basically. Have them say, Rika, your consciousness is overwriting the consciousness or entering the body of Rika already in the world. Because there's no Rika in that world, you should not be able to travel there. However, because Aowa is God and can do anything, she's like, I'll make an exception. We'll make a bet here. I will release Hanyu if you show me a miracle. I will let you go to that world, show me a miracle, save Satoko, I will release Hanyu as well. Rika, of course, agrees to this because Rika is a good girl and wants to save her friends. So, using Aowa's power, she adds one more little caveat. You cannot be seen, Rika, by anyone who doesn't already know. Basically, you can't be seen by anyone but Satoko, because everyone else doesn't know who Rika is in that fragment, and except Satoko because she's got the memories. So Rika, if you can't rely on your friends, you're on this on your own. Go and find Satoko and get her to agree to come back with you. And that's where we end the episode. Rika appears in the house that she shared with Satoko, looks all determined, and prepares to go and find her long-lost friend. Episode 7, we basically have a lot of Rika Metal Gear stealthing around Hinamizawa village. She sees her friends hanging out, playing club games. However, Satoko is not there. Because Satoko is not there, Rika's like, that's a bit odd. So she heads to the Furude shrine. She's just looking around, she's going everywhere and everywhere. At the shrine, she sees her parents. Her parents are there. Remember them from Higurashi Ray? Like her mum. It's kind of a callback. We can do a similar plot beats, but Rika knows, hey, I can't stay here this time, because we don't want to completely rehash the thing, just have some, like, a shocked look on her face or something. She overhears from her parents, who remember she can't talk to. She overhears from them about the Hojo. Old Teppei is back in town, so Rika is like, okay, I think I know what's going on here. Rika heads off to the Hojo residence, where she sees Satoko being beaten by Teppei, because that's just what we're doing with this. It doesn't make me happy either, but that's where we're going with this. Satoko, however, is not all crying and screaming. She's emotionless. She's emotionally dead. She's not making any, sound, any attempt to defend herself. She is, dead to the world, essentially. Teppei leaves to go have a smoke or go and drink with his friends. It doesn't matter what he's doing. Do Teppei things. Back when he was an asshole. Rika shows up. Satoko sees her and it's like, oh my god, it's Rika. Maybe she can think she's hallucinating at first, but then Rika's like, no, I'm real. Then Rika can grab Satoko. Two of them can run away into the night. I mean, it's daytime at this point, but they've run away. And eventually, they come across the club. Their friends, Satoko, Rika, and then they see Keiichi, Mion, and Reina. Maybe Shion as well, but maybe not. Who cares? And Rika is like, okay, maybe we can talk this out. We're friends. Maybe I can convince them. In Rika's head, she's thinking, maybe I can, help them remember me so I don't fail the terms of Aowa's game. Because she said, as long as they know who Rika is, it's fine. And because of the whole looping thing causing memories, she's thinking, okay, maybe I can use that to my advantage. Satoko, on the other hand, shoots all 3 of them dead, or 4 of them dead. And Rika is stunned by this, and is like, Satoko, what the hell? Why'd you shoot your friends? Why did you do that? And I'll tell you why she did that in the next episode. And basically the whole of episode 8 is just Satoko being tortured and going through the worst possible fragments. All her friends turn against her at various points. No one's on her side in any of these fragments. She can be killed by Keiichi, Mion, Reina. Because for Rika, this might have been the first fragment she went to go get Satoko, but Satoko's been through hell. She's been through a load of fragments where everything is not going her way. And yeah, just keep this up, the whole thing. She eventually loses hope. This is what it is like to live without Rika, further reinforcing the idea for her that she needs Rika to live successfully. And yeah, then it will link back up with the Rika episode where Rika meets her, and then instead when they meet the club, instead of Rika's point of view where you hear her talking about, oh okay, we can talk this out and we'll be fine. Instead you hear Satoko's point of view where she is like, everything they put me through, I'm not going through that again. Bang, 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 she shoots them, then we've linked back up for the next episode. Rika is absolutely shocked by Satoko's behaviour to begin episode 9, and Satoko is shocked at Rika. Do you have any idea what it's like to die so horribly, time after time, with nothing you can do to stop it? Because, yeah, of course she does, but Satoko's on the receiving end of it this time. Rika still tries to get Satoko to come home, and Satoko can't believe this. She can't believe that after everything she's been through, that Rika is still trying to get her to come home to St. Lucia. This whole situation has just made Satoko more sure that Rika needs to stay in Hinamizawa with her, otherwise, yeah, Satoko believes everyone will be against her and there's nothing she can do about it. Satoko kills herself one more time because she knows in her heart of hearts Rika will follow her because Rika needs her just like she needs Rika. Rika shoots herself to follow. Aowa, of course, thinks this whole thing is absolutely hysterical because of course she does. Rika, the next fragment she arrives in, carnage, bodies everywhere. Rika wondering what the hell happened in this fragment, and of course I'm going to tell you what happened in this fragment. She goes up to the Furude shrine, which is on fire because I think it's a cool visual. Satoko is in front of the Furude shrine with Rika's parents, dead bodies at her feet. And Rika, of course, is disgusted by this. Satoko tells Rika that she did this. She killed all these people. And then we're going to see it play out. This is what happens. Satoko arrived first. She's thinking, okay, I need to convince Rika to stay in Hinamizawa. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill everyone in this town, village, whatever. And so Rika sees that if she's not here, this will keep happening. So Satoko begins to do her plan when she's met with some resistance. Yep, we're doing Satoko versus Satoko here. Both Satokos are fighting in the world of fragments, similar to the original, except this time Hanyu and Aowa are there, and Hanyu's like, oh my god, what's happening? The reason for this is so Aowa can explain to Hanyu, and more importantly us, how this makes sense. So basically, it's Lupa Satoko and the Satoko who originally was in that body that the Lupa Satoko is now inhabiting. Because their point of views are so different, because their intentions are so different, they're having a fight and they can't coexist anymore within the same body. The reason this never happened to Rika originally, because all Rika really wanted was for everyone to survive. So now, these Satokos are at complete odds with each other. It makes a little bit more sense. That's all it needs in an explanation. The idea itself isn't inherently bad. It's a little goofy, yeah, but so's Go Sotsu in general. It's too bloody to be taken too seriously. So yeah, same thing happens, which Satoko wins, and then proceeds to kill everyone, and then it will loop back around to when Rika sees Satoko already killed everyone, and again, pretty horrified. Episode 10 begins with angry Rika and Satoko having a fight. How could you do that to your friends? How could my friends do that to me? Punch, punch, shout, shout. A lot of that going on. Aowa calls them both back to the world of fragments because she wants an end to this, because she wants entertainment, right? She's getting bored with this constant fighting. What she wants now, one of them to finish the other off, because the other one then will be completely miserable, and that's entertaining to her because she's an absolute psychopath. Hanyu, who is still trapped, has got an idea though. Aowa just wants to be entertained. She's going to give her the ultimate entertainment. She proposes a game of some sorts, calling back to, hey, they played games all the time in the club, it makes some sense. So what Aowa's decided to do, she is going to create a new fragment, and on that new fragment there will be a murder. Now the winner of the game has to correctly deduce who did the murder. And Rika and Satoko are both just like, okay, Satoko's an idiot, I can do that. But Satoko could be like, Rika, I will be certain to do it. Because, yeah, certain. Get it? Do you get it? That's what we're going for. They both get teleported to the new fragment. Teleported? I guess that works. The stakes are set. If Rika wins, Satoko will have to come to St. Lucia with her. If Satoko wins, Rika will have to stay in Hinamizawa. Aowa's power can make this binding so that no matter what fragment they go to, you know, this always happens. She has that power. She's almighty, if you couldn't tell. She is an almighty deity. Episode 11 begins on this new fragment with Rika and Satoko walking to school normally, but then every so often they'll like glare at each other and their eyes will change and stuff like that. At school they have normal club activities for the majority of the episode, you know, playing games. Satoko wins. Keiichi or someone can note like, oh, you two are trying much harder today because, yeah, the stakes are serious this time. On the way home, Reina, Keiichi and that. Reina's acting a little sus with Keiichi, calling back to like the first arc with, you know, Yosara! But not as overt as that. She's just being, as the little bit of what they like to call in the biz, a sussy backer. But no. Instead we have Satoko and Rika who are at home just waiting for something to happen, because there hasn't been a done murder yet, so they're just waiting for the murder to take place. The episode ends with a body being discovered. You can have maybe Mion be told, because Sonozaki connections and stuff to that effect. The dead body is, of course, Rina, the woman who was stealing Reina's dad's money. It wasn't really stealing, conning him out of it, so to speak. So yeah, immediately we have a suspect. Us, the viewer, are thinking Reina, because we've seen that arc. We know that Reina kills Rina, because this is a sequel. The intention is everyone's seen all the stuff before this, so we already have that knowledge, right? That is what we are being told is, okay, Reina is sus. And of course she was acting suspicious earlier. Oishi shows up at the school and gets Satoko and asks her, hey, is your uncle around? Because he's a suspect, basically. He doesn't tell her this, but this older Lupa Satoko is smart enough to realise, okay, Oishi's asking about my uncle. There's been a murder. He's probably a suspect. The gang all gets together, the club after school, they end up discussing it. Keiichi, of course, being Keiichi, is like, I want to solve a murder, guys. And Rika and Satoko, because hey, that's what they've got to do to win this game. They're, of course, in on it. Reina and Mion get sort of forced into it. They don't look very happy about it, but they're going to go along with it because it's the majority vote, so to speak. First thing they do, they go and find Teppei. He's their first lead. On the way there, they run into Shion, just because I want the whole gang together for this final arc. So yeah, they go find Teppei. Teppei is turning his life around. He's being a good guy. Maybe not as immediately turn around as it was in the original, because it was honestly a little off-putting how quickly he went from the biggest, baddest asshole in the world to he's a pretty pleasant guy now. No, maybe have it a bit more, you know, maybe he'll still lose his temper at points, but then he'll immediately be like, oh, I'm very sorry, you know. He's working on it, but he's not completely redeemed immediately. Because we've got to do the redemption because it started in Higurashi Go, and I'm not allowed to change that. But we're going to at least make it at least a little bit more good, basically. After visiting Teppei, they head to the clinic because the person that found the body was Takano. Of course, they question Takano because why wouldn't they? They're trying to figure out what's going on. They can find out Takano found the body from Sonozaki family connections. It's a get out of jail free card at this point, but hey, why not use it? Takano tells them everything she knows. It's a pretty normal sounding story. I was walking to work and then, oh my god, there's a body. Rika presses her a little bit more on this because Rika especially knows what Takano is really about. She might not be on this fragment, it's not important to the fragment story, but Rika is pushing her until Irie steps in and is like, alright, enough of this, stop it. He's a bit stern, but he's still friendly. He's like, alright, kids shouldn't be involved in things such as a murder. Which is fair enough, honestly. It's a fair enough point from Irie. He makes sense. So then they all leave. At the end of the day, Rika and Satoko are in their bed, going over their suspects in their head. Didn't mean to rhyme there. Rika thinks that Teppei might be a bit sus. Satoko, though, who of course has lived with Teppei on a previous world, knows he's a little bit... he's not going to do anything once he's redeemed, is leaning more towards Takano. However, both of them, knowing the knowledge of the previous worlds, think Reina is the most likely suspect. Episode 13 begins with the important information gotten through, what else? Sonozaki family connections. Reina's body has disappeared. Oishi shows up at school the next day and also tells them this because he is trying to get a rise out of them and try and, you know, figure out what's going on because he thinks they're acting mad sus trying to figure it out because he thinks, hey, you're kids, why are you getting involved if you don't have to? He's trying to like bait them into saying something to essentially admit to doing it because he might think it's Reina, he might think it's Keiichi, who knows. Then they spend the rest of this episode basically investigating random people. You can investigate Chi-sensei, maybe Mion's mum, hell, maybe Keiichi's parents. Do things that make it seem like it's up in the air who did it, alright? Reina at various points is impeding the investigation, we'll say. She doesn't want to interview her dad, but of course they push forward through it and, you know, she's being very suspicious. I don't like the word sus. Suspicious is Reina, further reinforcing the idea that, hey, Reina probably did it, but of course, it's not quite that simple, is it? The gang meets up the next day or at the end of the day to discuss where Satoko Hojo says that she's cracked the case. She know who did this there murder. Episode 14 begins with Satoko accusing Reina of doing it. Reina is horrified by this and Satoko explains her reasoning for why she thinks it's Reina. As she explains it and gives her story, it plays out on the screen similar to the story she did in whichever arc, the third arc of Sots, where, you know, she lied about Teppei beating up Keiichi and it played out on the screen as she said. Similar to that, as she's explaining it, it shows how Reina would have done it. It's very similar to the original arcs, maybe with a little bit of difference, but it's quite similar. After the story, Reina is sobbing and crying because she can't believe that Satoko believes that she did it. All the other friends are horrified and disgusted with Satoko. Like, she's your friend, Satoko. Why would you do that to her? And everything. Satoko gets annoyed because she is convinced. She's been on she's seen these other worlds. She knows Reina would do this. And she's getting more and more aggravated. She's like, look, there is no other suspects as to who could have done this. That gives Rika an idea. Rika says to Satoko, Reina couldn't have done it because in fact nobody could have done it because Reina is still alive. what? Satoko at first is like, that's ridiculous. Rika explains her theory that in order for Rina to stop taking Reina's dad's money, she faked her death so to let them live peacefully, basically. Changed the name, maybe moved away, who knows. Because Rika doesn't believe that Reina could have done it. Rina is alive. She believes that Takano and Irie are in on it. Because that's why Irie was so hush about it. About getting them out of the room, away from Takano, just in case Takano started to crack and tell them what was going on. So instead, Rika is convinced that Rina is still alive. Satoko thinks that's preposterous. She's like, that's a stupid. That's not what That's not what the deal was. That's not what Aowa said. Doesn't say that out loud, but it's implied. Rika says, okay then, Satoko, look at Reina. Do you really believe that she could have done it? Satoko looks at her, looks back, and admits defeat. Satoko's like, alright, I accept defeat. Because, let's not forget, right, through all of this, there's one thing we got to remember about Satoko. She's an idiot, right? She's not smart. She is maybe that's a bit harsh. She's not a smart character. She's not going to be able to disprove Rika. And because she can't disprove Rika, she thinks, therefore, Rika's idea is correct. You may have cottoned on to what we're really doing here. It's not about who can solve the murder. It's about who can convince the other person that they can solve the murder. Maybe you could have Aowa say that at the end, but Aowa could be like, well, I didn't see a miracle though, so Hanyu, you're staying here. But then you just have Hanyu smile a little bit. Final episode begins. Hanyu breaks free from her shackles. She reaches into the fragment from earlier where Rika put the sword in the ground and gets the sword from the fragment. Because that at least makes a little bit more sense than the sword just falling into the world of fragments. The reason for this is because, hey, you're not waiting for a miracle to happen. She made the miracle happen by distracting Aowa long enough, by being entertained by the plan that she thought of so that she could get the sword without Aowa noticing. So yeah, then the scene plays out pretty similar to it did in the original. Aowa gets shrunken by her horn being damaged by Hanyu, and then disappears like very well, you know. She's not lost, but she's let Hanyu get away with it, basically, because it's a miracle, it's what she said, she's a woman of her word, if nothing else. Satoko and Rika then arrive back in a fragment before they head to St. Lucia, much to Satoko's confusing, because she was convinced, hey, we were going to end up in St. Lucia regardless. The reason for this is because Rika decided, hey, I'm not going to force you to go to St. Lucia right now. But she reiterates, one day you will. And Satoko agrees. One day we will be together and you will stay in Hinamizawa. They haven't given up. They're just taking a break, basically. From here on, it's basically the same as the original final episode. Keep the Umineko tease at the train. Until Satoko then meets up with Shion and Teppei. That's very similar. And, you know, they're all together. Instead, different thing happens. Irie runs up, maybe Takano, someone runs up from the clinic and is like, hey, Satoshi's awake. And when that happens, you get shocked Satoko, eyes wide, one red eye, one normal eye. And then we go to the world of fragments where the two Satokos are talking. Which Satoko is just like, hey, is this really what you want? And normal Satoko is like, yeah, it is. And then Witch Satoko's like, okay then. Normal Satoko returns to the body, Witch Satoko stays in the world of fragments. Smiles and it's just like, now it's your turn to chase me. Referring, of course, to Rika. Keep the bit with Hanyu smiling and have a very early credits. Post-credits scene, it's a couple months later. Rika has come to visit for Watanagashi, and she just sees how things are going on. You could do a load of things here. Maybe Takano's pregnant. Maybe Keiichi and Reina are dating. It's not that important, but just have things going to show how things, sort of like an epilogue of sorts. Now, the important thing though is her reunion with Satoko and the whole Hojo family. She sees all of the Hojo family having a good time. Maybe they're just getting shopping or something, but they're all there. Satoshi, Satoko, and Teppei. Maybe Shion too, but she's optional, I guess. So yeah, Rika sees this, and because she can tell immediately, she looks at Satoko, she's like, oh, this isn't my Satoko anymore. This is just a regular Satoko. So she smiles and is like, snaps her fingers and leaves. And then the final shot of the season is the now human versions of Rika and Satoko, without the witches possessing them, without the Lupa versions, the original versions. They reunite as old friends, they can hug. big old reunion. It's happy because honestly, yeah, the looping is what screwed them both up. That's the lesson to take away from this. And that's where it ends. The final shot is them being happy, but not the looper versions being happy. And that's it. That's how I would have done Higurashi Sotsu. Did you enjoy it? Do you think I made it worse? Please tell me you don't think I made it worse. I think it was alright. Couldn't have been any worse than the 13 episodes of recap. At least this is a somewhat interesting story. Do I think I did the perfect thing to do? No, I just thought it was quite interesting. Now, there is one thing we have to mention, and I haven't mentioned it this whole time because I wanted to save it for the end, and that's Umineko, right? So, I did think about when planning this video going full-on Umineko witch ending, but then I kind of thought it wouldn't make sense to a lot of people, you know? You can't just cater to the hardcore when they cry lore masters in this. You have to like leave things open enough to where those people can see, oh okay, this is how it happened, but not so be directly blatant that it confuses other people, right? So in my head, this does still confirm, yes, Rika burn, Lambda, Satoko. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. It's Umineko stuff, don't worry about it. I guess I'll quickly go over what my thinking was in regards to Lambda, right? Because there's a lot of fan theories. This is the headcanon for this rewrite, okay? So in Kikonia, right? We're going all the way to the beginning. Kikonia, there's a character called Veer, who in Higurashi Sotsu, Aowa calls Satoko Veer. So what we're getting from this is Veer rebirths herself as Satoko somehow, transfers her consciousness, but loses all her memories. So Veer is Satoko. And then my guess is after this, at some point, she'll regain her memories, and then the two memories will merge, and then that will sort of make Lambda Delta somehow. That's kind of my working theory as to what it is, and Takano is a red herring. That's kind of and Burn is obviously Rika. That's kind of what I think. It's nothing official, it's just sort of the small headcanon I was working with when going into this. Just so I had some stuff make a little bit of sense. But it's, of course, none of that is important enough. Did you enjoy this video? I hope you did, because I enjoyed writing it and making it. It was a lot of fun. I want to do more videos like this. It's just a shame that more anime, you know, aren't exactly suited for this, because they're long-running light novels or whatever, but this was anime original, so I can mess with it all I want. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos. I don't know when the next one will be, but it'll be sometime. I will see you next time, so take care, and bye guys.